Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'll update the House on the government's response to events at home and abroad during the Easter recess. I will come to Ukraine in a moment, since I've just left a virtual meeting with President Biden, President Macron, Chancellor Scholz, and 8 other world leaders. But let me begin in all humility by saying that on the 12th of April, I received a fixed penalty notice relating to an event in Downing Street on the 19th of June 2020. I paid the fine immediately, and I offered the British people a full apology. And I take this opportunity on the first available sitting day to repeat my wholehearted apology to the House. As soon as I received the notice, I acknowledged the hurt and the anger. And I said that people had a right to expect better of their Prime Minister. And I repeat that, Mr. Speaker, again in the House now. Let me also say, not by way of mitigation or excuse, but purely because it explains my previous words in this House, that it did not occur to me then or subsequently that a gathering in the Cabinet room just before a vital meeting on COVID strategy could amount to a breach of the rules. I repeat, that was my mistake, and I apologise for it unreservedly. I respect the outcome of the police investigation, which is still underway. And I can only say that I will respect their decision-making and always take the appropriate steps. And as the House will know, I have already taken significant steps to change the way things work in Number 10. And it is precisely because I know that so many people are angry and disappointed that I feel an even greater sense of obligation to deliver on the priorities of the British people and to respond in the best traditions of our country to Putin's barbaric onslaught against Ukraine. Our Ukrainian friends are fighting for the life of their nation, and they achieved the greatest feat of arms of the 21st century by repelling the Russian assault on Kiev. And the whole House will share my admiration for their heroism and courage. Putin arrogantly assumed that he would capture Kiev in a matter of days. And now the blackened carcasses of his tanks and heavy armour litter the approaches to the capital on both banks of the Dnieper and are smouldering monuments to his failure. Having pulverised the invaders' armoured spearheads, the Ukrainians then counterattacked, and by the 6th of April, Putin had been compelled to withdraw his forces from the entire Kiev region. Britain and our allies supplied some of the weaponry, but it was Ukrainian valour and sacrifice which saved their capital. I travelled to Kiev myself on the 9th of April, the first G7 leader to visit since the invasion, and I spent 4 hours with President Volodymyr Zelensky, the indomitable leader of a nation fighting for survival who gives the roar of a lion-hearted people. I assured him of the implacable resolve of the United Kingdom, shared across this House, to join with our allies and give his brave people the weapons they need to defend themselves. When the President and I went for an impromptu walk through central Kiev, we happened upon a man who immediately expressed his love for Britain and the British people. And he was generous enough to say, quite unprompted, I should reassure the House, I will tell my children and grandchildren they must always remember that Britain helped us. But the urgency is even greater now because Putin has regrouped his forces and launched a new offensive in the Donbass. We knew this danger would come. And when I welcomed President Duda of Poland to Downing Street on the 7th of April and Chancellor Scholz the following day, we discussed exactly how we could provide the arms that Ukraine would desperately need to counter Putin's next onslaught. On the 12th of April, I spoke to President Biden to brief him on my visit to Kiev and how we will intensify our support for President Zelensky, and I proposed that our long-term goal must be to strengthen and fortify Ukraine to the point where Russia will never dare to invade again. Just as our foreign policy must look to the long term, the same is true of this government's domestic priorities. And as we face the economic aftershocks of COVID and the consequences of Russian aggression, that is above all in tackling the impact on British energy prices and on consumers and on family bills. And that's why we're spending over £9 billion to help families struggling with their bills. We're helping families to insulate their homes and reduce costs, and to end our dependence on Putin's oil and gas, and to ensure that energy is cheaper in the long term. We published on the 7th of April a new strategy to make British energy greener, more affordable and more secure. We will massively expand offshore wind, and in the country that split the atom, we will build a new reactor not every decade, but every year. This government is joining with our allies to face down Putin's aggression abroad while addressing the toughest problems at home, helping millions of families with the cost of living, making our streets safer and funding the NHS to clear the COVID backlog. My job is to work every day to make the British people safer, more secure and more prosperous, and that is what I will continue to do, and I commend this statement to the House.